kind of grew up together at Ball State University. We actually both started in the entrepreneurship program at the same time in 2001. But Rob had a running head start. He actually got started in that program as a student. So no one knows Ball State and Ball State entrepreneurship better than Rob, and he's going to tell you that story. He was an undergraduate here in entrepreneurship in the famed Senior Sweat experience. He was taught by the legendary Don Caraco, who still mentors him and me. And then he got an MBA, and we started about the same time, 2001, when he came into the program full-time. I was a whippersnapper assistant professor at that time, just going to cut my teeth here at Ball State. And then over time, we both worked together to grow the program and bring in some new things. Eventually, we started the Schneider Institute here at Ball State over in Carmichael. And he's going to share with you that extensive journey. And in that, you're going to see that Rob is not only a great teacher and a great program manager, but also he's an entrepreneur. And now he's a scholar. So, Rob?
Thanks for coming out. Wow, that's great. All right, so when you think of the word talent, what do you think of? What do you think? Just think about that. Let that simmer for the next 2 hours. No, just kidding. The next 45 minutes or so. And we'll come back to it, okay? We'll talk about it a little bit. But do you think of talent here? Does this make you think of talent? Like, what kind of talent does this make you think of? Artistic? Yeah. What about this? There's all kinds of talent going on here, right? So we have responsibility and teaching talent from a mom. We have an incredible teacher talent, just a real gift. And then we have youth talent, youthful talent. And, you know, if you have pictures of one, you can't have pictures of without the other, right? So we have dance talent, we have golf talent. Boy, I wish I had a backswing like that, for sure. So, but lots of talent going on there. Lots of talent here. Lots of talent here. Artists on stage, brought a guest on stage with them. The gift of stage. So the plan for tonight. Talk a little bit about myself just to give you some context, some background. I'll give you 3 observations from my 20 years at Ball State. 20 years, wow, that's crazy. 2 decades. I feel old all of a sudden. I'll give you a brief overview of my dissertation. That might be the time you might want to slouch down and pull out the pillow out of your bag if you have it, get comfortable. Go over some of the key results of my dissertation and some final conclusions. So that's kind of the plan. So a little bit about me, and I have pictures of other people up here, and it's not exhaustive by any means, because most of you in the room have supported me over the years in some way or another. Ted, Rhonda, Delana, Margot. So I couldn't put everybody up there, but a few that I did was Mike, huge influence on my life. Will Davis, huge influence. Dr. Wessel, who was my dissertation chair, phenomenal human being. And then my family, because the way that I did a doctorate, certainly not the way that Imran did a doctorate, maybe more the way that Rhonda did a doctorate. It's like full adulthood, lots of life going on, job going on, lots of distractions, lots of noise. And so it's a real family effort, no doubt about it. And so my wife Julie, Nate, and Lindsay. So very supportive and a lot of sacrifice there. Lots of sacrifice. So jump right into the 3 observations that I have in the last 20 years. And I guess a little bit of background before I start in this. I was in the Entrepreneurship Center for about 17 years, mentored students, worked with our outside board, worked with business owners, consulted with business owners, had quite a broad variety of interactions, Lots of great experiences. As Mike said, grew up with Don Karatko, Jeff Hornsby, and Mike. I mean, that's like 3 of the top names in the field, in the country. So, I mean, what a blessed life, you know? It's just crazy. And then the last 2 years, we've been in the Schnatter Institute, and that's been a totally different shift of gears, but it's been fun. And I have some of my Entre Leaders pack here, you know, and we've had a lot of fun the last 2 years. And so the first thing I'll say is entrepreneurship is popular. I mean, in higher education, it is popular. Pretty much every school in the country has a program. So there's literally thousands of some form of programming out there. There's literally tens of thousands of students. And at Ball State in particular, and Mike and I are really proud of this, right before we moved over to the Schnatter Institute, we grew that program substantially. Our intro class went from about 2 sections a year, about 70 students, to over 700 in the course of about 3 years. I mean, it was explosion. And the only challenging part was big, huge sections for me every semester, which was a new experience and something that changes the game. You don't get to know your students quite as well, but it brings a new element. And it allowed us to serve a lot of students across campus, which was really eye-opening. So a lot of growth in the field. Now, here's the weird thing about entrepreneurship education. It's under 35 years old for all intents and purposes. And so it's still very youthful. And Rhonda could attest to this, I know, because she studied it. But entrepreneurship education doesn't have a lot of data behind it. It hasn't been very well researched. Why? Because faculty members are more interested in researching entrepreneurs and business owners, and less interested in researching themselves and their students. In general, that's true. And I was really surprised when I dove into all this that, boy, there's just not a lot out there. Now, the problem, I think, with that is we haven't exactly figured out how to do it yet. As you can imagine, it's a really challenging discipline to teach and grow students in. There's all kinds of awesome opportunities, but how do we really help them grow as people? And so that's, I think, a bit of a challenge. I said it's scary to people because Mike and I got an education the last 2 years, 3 years, that, you know, maybe people outside the business school don't feel the same way about entrepreneurship that we do. It was an education, wasn't it? And now the good news is, it's just a matter of perspective. And so we have a little different view of entrepreneurship than maybe people think, you know, traditionally. So it's not exclusively for for-profit companies. It's for individuals, it's for nonprofits, it's really for teams, it's for anybody. So it's not limited. One of my favorite things that we've done the last 2 years is a program called Entre Leaders. And the idea was really to come up with this leadership development program that had a flair for creativity and innovation. So entrepreneurial leadership. And we've had a tremendous amount of fun with that. And certainly we don't know everything or, you know, maybe anything. I don't know. But just getting people together across campus has had a huge impact, hasn't it? And getting the perspectives together. So as we think about talent, think about some of those keywords you're hearing. So why is it so popular? I think it's so popular because human ingenuity, what you can do here, it surpasses everything that you can do here. Yeah, I just think people are intrigued by it. Like it is the essence of who we are, isn't it? I mean, because honestly, this drives anything you could do here. I mean, it all starts here for Michael Jordan, I guarantee it. So I think that's why people are so intrigued by it. And I think there's just something about the ability to find and solve problems, create off of those solutions, and build that has this allure. Like people are drawn to it for the most part. People are drawn to it. Let's face it, people look to entrepreneurial people to solve problems. I mean, it's not, there's a lot of ways to define problems. It could be like trivial day-to-day things like a key fob, or it could be the most daunting challenges that we have in society. The things that Mike talked about in his talk a couple of months ago, the drug issues and the things like that are so overwhelming to us, right? And entrepreneurial people are the start of the solution. So, and something that Mike and I, I would say that we, really, creatively came across this, but I would say we just stumbled across this idea of chaotic tension in the last couple of months, and it just fascinates me. Like it just fascinates me because, so I didn't invent this term, by the way. Dee Hock, who was the founding CEO of Visa in the 90s, came up with this term because he said there's this tug of war going on. This tug of war between what? Chaos and order. So entrepreneurship, innovation, creativity, wanting to strive to do something better or something new or a new way of doing something, or systems, processes, rules, order. And do we all deal with that every day, especially in higher ed? Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt we do. Here's what I've noticed. Great leaders finesse this. It's a real art. It's a real touch. And a few people that come to mind for me. One would be Kevin Lansbury. He's the CFO of Disney Parks and Travel, Ball State graduate. He left Ball State, moved down to Orlando against his parents' will, I think, and was an accounting clerk, hourly wage. Kevin gets opportunity, another opportunity, another opportunity. The path that he had many opportunities, but two that kind of stand out to me was, and he's told Mike and I these stories, Kevin was asked to write a business plan for one of their new modern water parks. He was also asked to open one of their new water parks, modern. It was a real paradigm shift for the company because it was like in the early 90s, and what happened was they had this really outdated water park that was called River Country, and it was on a lake, and they used lake water. You think about that today, like my wife's freaking out right now. Amoeba. So it was a big paradigm shift, and he pulled it off. So when you do things like that, you get opportunity. Now, that's not really the key point to chaotic tension with Kevin. What we always notice about Kevin, every dinner, every conversation, he's a CFO. What do CFOs, where do they live on this continuum? They live in order. Kevin lives here. He's appreciative, genuinely appreciative of the ideas, of the innovation. He's enthusiastic about it. As a matter of fact, he just told me recently, he said, "You're not going to believe some of the changes we have coming." He never gives us secrets, by the way, and we don't ask, but you're not going to believe some of the things that are coming. And he's genuinely excited. Now, Kevin's CFO, Extreme, also has to finance those projects. So think about that for a minute. His job is to criticize and discern and be careful and spread the wealth, right? But he does a great job with that chaotic tension. Someone else that comes to mind is my friend Sam Risley. And Sam started, 15 years ago, started a ministry in Liberia, Africa, called Hope to Liberia. And the whole idea was to take water there, to get them fresh water. If you don't know, Liberia is one of the few countries that went from basically a first world country backwards to a third world country because of civil war, because of greed. I mean, they tore down the infrastructure of that country to fight. They made bullets out of power lines and just a ravaged country. But what's really neat about these people is they are so ingenuitive. They are so creative. They will take a problem that you or I could not fix, like, say, a truck that's not running, but they need it, and they don't have any experience with an engine. They'll figure it out. For them, it's survival right now. But Sam, I mean, Sam is, if you know Sam, and I know a couple of you do, he's unorthodox for sure, but what's neat about Sam is order would be, oh, stay in Muncie. There's plenty of ministry work to do in Muncie. There's just stay in the church. Keep it calm. Keep it simple. Keep it safe. Sam says, we're going to do this over here. We're going to venture off into chaos because people need us. And what you find out is you end up needing them more than they need you. But you can certainly provide some things that maybe they can't provide on their own, or maybe they just need a jump start. But Sam comes to mind. And then Entre Leaders comes to mind because one of the things I think we really work on with the group is how do you manage this? Because you're going to be expected to follow rules, follow processes, follow procedures. But if that's all you do, you lose the creativity, you lose the innovation, you lose the doing it the better way. You never do immersive learning. You never do the Schneider Institute. You never, because of the fear of the unknown and the comfort with the process. Now, there are some people, I might be one of them, I'm actually in discomfort over here in process and order. Some of it's okay, like that much. But I need new challenges. And but most people, they get in a zone, right? Get in the zone, get in the groove, kind of like if you've been watching the Olympics, you know, the luge and the skeleton, they start out in the groove, you know. There's notches in the ice track, right? And they start out in the groove. But then it gets chaotic really quickly, you know, at like 70, 80 miles an hour. So that's just some of my takes on chaotic tension. So number 2, entrepreneurship is a team sport. And for a long time, entrepreneurship education got this all wrong. And to a certain degree, we still do. And I mean nationwide. But, you know, Mike and I, despite tradition of the entrepreneurship program at Ball State being solo-driven, like one student for him or herself, we said, you know, there has to be a better way. And so we would give them just a little start on an idea. One of the programs that we used was called Military to Market, and we used military technologies, intellectual property, that the students could at least have a start. Now, they could decide what the market application was, so they could still use their ingenuity by all means. But it allowed, and then we put students on teams because we knew that the talent of one is not enough. You just can't, even if you have a broad array of skills and talents, you can't possibly do it all. So if you know anything about competitive cycling, and I don't claim to be an expert, but I do know enough to know that they run in teams. And if one guy or one lady wins, the team wins. That's the deal. So they're working behind the scenes. They're blocking. They're blocking the wind. You know, they're doing all these things they're taking away resistance. They're blocking from potential trouble. They're doing all these things to head towards the common goal. So a few examples of this that come to mind. One would be, we had a student, really talented student. I mean, this guy, Sean Lanahan, is actually so talented that when he left here to pursue his entrepreneurial dream, he started selling BMWs in Carmel and did quite well. He didn't pursue, we had this simulated skin project from Military to Market, really awesome. Here's a case where we let a student down. we didn't partner him with the right students to, and I think personally it should have been even across campus in hindsight, but he needed more talents around him. He was talented, but he needed more. He needed more perspective. Another really cool project that I was fortunate to lead as an instructor was the Britons, and it's a business called Dragonfly Corals out of Noblesville, and they had a coral manufacturing business. Like, they manufactured coral in their barn behind their property. When they came to us, this was out of a class in our minor, entrepreneurship minor, and the students, these people they were great at what they did technically. They knew how to grow coral. They didn't know how to sell it. They didn't know how to inventory it. They didn't know how to market it. And those are a lot of kind of skills and ancillary functions of the business that if you could be really good at coral, but it's hard to have a successful business without the other things. So they came to us and said, could you help us do a marketing plan? Well, I had like 7 or 8 students on this team from all different majors across campus. And this is where I realized this is where the magic happens. Because those students brought so many unique skills, knowledge, spaces, and talents to the table. And so what happened, marketing plan, yeah, we'll do that, sure. And of course, then you start sweating, like, okay, we just made a promise. The students have to fulfill this. And, as you know, and on those projects, the role of the instructor is kind of the prod. Like, okay, let's keep moving forward on this. The semester isn't as long as you think. That project wasn't an issue. As a matter of fact, not only did these students do a complete marketing campaign plan, social media, these people didn't have anything. They did it all. And they did a plan out for like 2 years, okay? That was adaptable, of course. But then they started doing other things that they weren't asked to do. Why? Because they were in their talent space. They were glad to do it because they liked those people. I think they liked me, maybe, I don't know. And they liked what they were doing. It felt good. And they could use their gifts. They could use their talents. Whenever you could pull something out of here, you can usually do really well. And so they developed an inventorying system, a whole point-of-sale type system. They developed a delivery system, a sales system. They suggested some hiring ideas on. It was phenomenal. So that was a really fun project. We did a project with Ball State Athletics, and this is pre-video board, the marquees in front of Emmons and the arena. They didn't have those. So no informational kind of as drive-by, eyes on it, convenient advertising. Several other things, initiatives from a marketing and engagement standpoint. These students made like 9 suggestions. And President Gora actually came to this presentation because she was intrigued. And she even said to him, well, if you have $5 million, we can do all this stuff. Well, I'm pretty proud to say that 6, 7, 8 years later, every one of those initiatives that those students outlined happened. Everything. And I'm not saying that, it was all because of them, but I will say this. Sean Sullivan, and he's not here, but he's in EntreLeaders, he told me the other day, he said, you'd be surprised. That report, the printed bound copy, is easily accessible to the staff. He's been here 3 years, and he said that was one of the first things he was handed when he walked in. I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. So that's entrepreneurship. That's human ingenuity. It's ideas. It's ways to implement those ideas. It's solutions to problems. It's not just starting a mega for-profit business. I think successful entrepreneurial endeavors, they're really a collection and coordination of skills, knowledge, experiences, perspective. And it's a multiplying effect. It's, wow, we have 10 different perspectives on this team cognitively. We have many different skills. So you get the idea. It's just this multiplier that happens. It's really cool. Human ingenuity. So anybody know what this is? No, you just be quiet. What is it?
Avatar.
Yeah, so this is at Disney World, one of my favorite places to go. The other's Disneyland. Oh. This is the new world of Avatar, if you're familiar with the Blue People movie. So this is human ingenuity, but you know what? One person didn't do this. As a matter of fact, many, many, many people did this. But the picture doesn't totally do it justice, but it's amazing. Like, you just walk in there and you go, how did somebody create this? How did a collection of people find their sorts enough to get together, collaborate, bring their skills, their talents, their perspectives together, and build this? And this, of course, isn't the only thing that they have, that's totally amazing. They have Cars Land out in Disneyland and all these just things where you go, wow, how did they do that? So pretty cool. What about that? You think that took a village to build? I mean, it's hard to even fathom. And by the way, I don't even know what city that is, but that's probably over 100 years of human ingenuity at work. It's amazing. Anybody ever been up like in the CN Tower in Toronto, or one of those super crazy tall buildings where if you like heights but you don't like heights, you're kind of like this, even though like it really matters. But I just get in those things and I go, how did they do this? It's so tall, it moves. You can feel it sway. I mean, how did they do this? It's amazing what people can do. Amazing. All right, number 3. Entrepreneurship is behavioral, and I believe this at the core of my soul. So the first thing I believe is that I like to think of entrepreneurship as an adjective. And I think that that's one of the reasons that I think I developed this perspective, because of what I learned when I got outside the College of Business and how people felt and what their perceptions were about entrepreneurship. It's all about money, greed, those kinds of things. If you're entrepreneurial, then Margot is entrepreneurial, Kevin is entrepreneurial, Ted is entrepreneurial, Delane is entrepreneurial. That's the perspective that I have, and everyone has the ability to have some level of creativity, ideation capabilities, those kinds of things. I really believe at the heart of entrepreneurship is problem finding. We don't talk about that much. We do. But you have to find problems. You have to actively, entrepreneurs seek them out, believe me. Companies have no way to get paid or to find who owes them or whatever. And likewise, the customer doesn't have a good system to move through either. In comes Will Davis and Ron Farquhar, Ontario systems. So it is all about problem finding, problem solving. Sometimes it falls in your lap. Sometimes you really have to go out and find it. Sometimes people bring it to you and they say, I don't want to do this, but here's a real problem. So I always tell our students, look around you. What are the problems? What are your daily issues? What do you encounter every day where you say, that could be better? There could be a better solution. We can make life better. And so Sam, when he took really simple water filtration to Liberia, life's better over there. So it doesn't have to be something huge. It's just something that you're passionate about and drives fulfillment. Because if you're operating in your talent zone, you're going to be passionate about it, you're going to be at your best, and you're going to be fulfilled, period. This is something I think people often get confused of. Entrepreneurship is not necessarily an end product. It could be a moment, like, whew, there's a better way to do this. It could be a project. It could be a job. I suppose it could be an event if it's a moment. But it could be life-based. I mean, people have obviously differing degrees of how much they use their human ingenuity. And we'll see a graphic later that will bring that home. Warning, it is graphic. So here's a question. What do you suppose the artist who created the macaroons in the previous slide, what do you think that person cared about? What do you think they cared about? Anybody know macaroons? Very hard to make. Very hard to make. What do you think they cared about? We don't really know because we don't know who made them or what was important to them. It could have been the joy of someone biting into it. Someone else that made them could have said, I don't really want anybody to bite in them. It's a work of art. Some, it could have been the perfection of getting it just right because they are hard to make. So, overview of my dissertation. So again, this is where, unless you're, the faculty in the audience, you might want to get comfortable, but we'll buzz through this pretty quick. So, I had about 400 complete samples, and thank you, Rhonda. You participated in that. Appreciate that. Oops, I wasn't supposed to say what school. That's all right. You could guess, right? I conducted this research at 3 mid-sized schools in the Midwest. All undergrad entrepreneurship courses. Most were entry level with a few exceptions. I pre-tested the students before I started. Demographics, so anything you can think of demographically, including, and this was a unique twist on really what's out there, including a problem-solving style inventory. So how do they tend to go about solving problems? I pre-tested them on openness to ideation. So how open were they to the ideation process? So were they the idea killer who really just didn't want to mess with it for whatever reason? Or were they the person who was like, yeah, I can't get enough? And then I also tested for entrepreneurial intent within the next year, 5 years, or ever were the questions. And then I blended the results to keep it simple, because that's what I was told. The best dissertation is a finished dissertation. So, Rhonda, thank you. Mike said it too. After Rhonda, though. The treatment that I use, so that's like I guess a fancy research term for how did I manipulate the subjects. And so what I did was I did 75 minutes in class of what we would call divergent activity. So basically we went through how do you open your mind up, how do you get rid of those kind of killer phrases and beating people's ideas down and beating your own ideas down. And so we went through, it's like hey, we stretched, we did jumping jacks, we ran a couple of sprints, and we just practiced, It's just practice. That's what I told the student. That's what I always say. When I walk into a room, it's like, hey, we're just going to do some practice here. So you get your gym shoes on, get your sweats on, we're going. And that's what we do. So then the next class, I gave them an assignment between classes. I said, all right, I want you each to come up with 10 new venture ideas. One sentence, simple. It can be a social cause. It can be a for-profit, nonprofit. I don't care. Doesn't matter. You're not solving the world's problems here. If you want to, that's great. But it's just simple. Keep it simple. And then I said, okay, when you do that, they turned that in. Narrow it down to your top 3. So that's divergent and convergent activity right there. Diverge, open the floodgates. Convergent, narrow it down to what you think is actually doable or what you'd like to work on. And then I paired them the next class, and I've done this for 10 years in my own classes, so I had a lot of practice. I said, all right, now, surprise, I'm going to put you in groups of 4. And so I put them in groups of 4. Now we're diverging again, right? We go from 3 ideas to 12 in the group, okay? And now they get to see, again, magic happen. Because they say, oh, wow, I never thought of that. Ooh, what if we combined our ideas? What if we took a piece of your idea and stuck it on my idea? What if your idea just influenced my idea? You know? And so amazing things started happening. If you've seen the billboard with Matt King with the drone coming from Anderson to Muncie on I-69, he came up with a lot of that business idea, which is booming now, in that class. Another one would be the food delivery business. I'm blanking out on it. Transient, yes. So that business, the seed was in that class, one of my classes. So just really cool stuff. And students that will come up to you and say, we're feeding people in downtown Indianapolis, or I made $60,000 last summer cutting lawns, or all these crazy stories. And sometimes you think, when you say made, do you mean revenue, or you mean someday you think you will? No, I profited. Wow, really? Or I fed 2,000 people last summer in downtown Indy, whatever. It's amazing though, if you just give them just a little venue, what happens? It's amazing. And so then I post-tested them on openness to ideation, entrepreneurial intent. As you can imagine, we're looking for change. All right, so some key findings. And I'm going to kind of run through these. If someone has a question, maybe jot it down and either ask me after or send me an email or something like that. So key findings 1 and 2, openness to ideation and entrepreneurial intent, as I expected, this wasn't a surprise to me, increased significantly. So think about that. In 150 minutes, students were much more favorable towards the ideation process, and they were much more interested in potentially starting a business someday. Now, the one thing I wish, and Mike and I have talked about adjusting this measure to be more about behavior than actually starting a business. That's kind of a research move I'd like to make down the road, because it'd be really impactful for corporate settings and just life settings in general, I think. Key findings 3 and 4. Entrepreneurship education effect on openness to ideation post-test, and entrepreneurial intent pre and post-test was highly significant. Not surprising, don't even have to talk about it a whole lot. The only thing I would say is the significance on post-test openness to ideation. It tells me that entrepreneurship students had just enough exposure to ideation that if you tip them over the edge a little bit. Now, what we don't know is this was a very short time frame. Would you have to keep doing that over and over again? I mean, we don't know the interval side of it. But what we do know is that for this experiment, for this treatment, that at least entrepreneurship students had a higher gain in openness to ideation, or at least relative to where they started. So pretty interesting on that front. Key finding number 5, prior exposure. This is not surprising either, folks. I mean, this one's like, yeah, could have seen that coming. I had about 5 measures for prior exposure to entrepreneurship. So did the student currently own a business or own a business in the past? Did their parents own a business? Did they work in an entrepreneurial venture? Those kinds of things. And highly significant to pre and post-test entrepreneurial intent. Now, what that tells us is immersive learning is a big deal here, and there's a reason for that. It's because exposure is so important. You know, can you imagine, as a junior in college or even high school, you go shadow a leader the quality of Will Davis? That's going to change your life. So, so it's a big deal. So that's not surprising. But not everybody gets the opportunity. That's the difference. And so if one component is as simple as exposure, surely we can do that if students want that. Number 6, I won't talk about this a whole lot, but a little bit. Academic major, there is an interesting piece of this though. Academic major, and I divided it out into business majors, non-business majors. Business, non-business. Because I just didn't have the numbers of each and every major and then crossing over from campuses. And so academic major had a significant effect on post-test entrepreneurial intent. So who do you think the non-biz majors or the biz majors increase their entrepreneurial intentions? Non. Just an efficacy deal. And it goes back to it. I mean, I guarantee if we ran some kind of correlation, it'd point back to exposure. They just hadn't been exposed to it. So in those 150 minutes, maybe not the first 75, because maybe in their major, they already got that creative stuff, like if they're graphic design or something. But I guarantee in the second 75 minutes, they're like, whoa, I could do this. I could do this, especially if I have, a little cadre of some talented people around me. I could do this. So I think that was interesting. 7 and 8. We're getting there. As our minister, Greg Paris, likes to say, we're rounding third. We're heading home. It's almost over. The pain is almost over. So, and this is cool stuff. This is where I think the breakthrough is. Problem-solving style had a significant effect on pre- and post-test openness to ideation, entrepreneurial intent. You have to see this graphically to understand it. So this instrument we use to measure problem-solving style, it's by a researcher named Ambassador. Really good data set behind it. And what it says is, here's my style. And on the horizontal axis, on the right side, I use knowledge to get more knowledge, to ideate. So, we know this. Well, if we know this, what else can we do with it? On the left side, we use knowledge to evaluate, to judge. So what do we see here? What's the paradigm here? Chaos, order. Right? Okay. Vertical axis, how do we get knowledge? Well, either through experiencing, so experiential, or through more detached abstract thinking. So kind of think about how you do things and how you think through things. Do you call your buddies in the industry to say, hey, I was get some best practices. How do you do this? Kevin might call attorney at another university and say, hey, how do you do this? Like, how have you guys handled this? Have you dealt with this before? You might go and look at some case study. You might just read. You might contemplate. The other one would be experience. I'm just going to see what happens. I'm just going to get out there, very physical, tactile experience. So here's what this looks like. So if we kind of keep this in mind, ideation, evaluation, so chaos and order, and then experiencing and thinking. We have generators and conceptualizers on the right. And when you pair them together, do you think pre-test they were more open to ideation? More open ideation? Of course. Yeah, I mean, that's the measure, really. Right. Less open? Here's where it gets fascinating. So the gain, both parties, both sides of the fence gained. This side of the fence, it was significant changes, but when I looked at the actual numbers, huge gains over here. Huge gains in openness to ideation. I mean, so that's encouraging. For someone who kind of likes to live in chaos, that's really encouraging. It's like, there's hope for this world. So, and I don't live in chaos all the time. Let's just, I'm not a risk management concern or anything like that. But I do like new ideas, and I like to try things, and I like to create and build. So entrepreneurial intent, same deal. Same deal. You could just lay it over it. So these people had good entrepreneurial intent. Why? Because they're comfortable. It just shows the importance of ideation in entrepreneurship. And I think we downplay it. I think in this field, we downplay it all the time. And it's like, why? It's the starting point and the end point and everything in between. Because everything you do, you're gonna ideate on it. Even when you're looking at, okay, how am I gonna have systems? You're still gonna ideate on that. And I guess that's important to point out too. In entrepreneurial ventures, order is important. Order is important. You have to have order, systems, processes, procedures, rules I call it to really scale and grow the entrepreneurial dream. If you don't, it's going to be really hard to grow it. It's going to be really hard to take your baby and blow it up. But fascinatingly, these people got more interested in starting their own businesses. A lot more interested. I mean, that's cool, because now you put these 4 people together on a team, man, what could they do? I mean, there's lots of perspective there. It's great. Awesome. And by the way, the red, yellow, green, that's a problem-solving process that we use that overlays the styles, which is, I think it's gold. I mean, and people have used it a lot. Stephanie uses it a lot. Mike and I use it a lot. Ted's starting to use it. It works, and it generates good ideas, but it has order and discipline to it. All right. Last but not least. So this was a little confrontational for me. Gender had a significant effect on pre- and post-test entrepreneurial intent, but not openness to ideation. Now, what does that mean? Well, I had to go into the numbers to see what it meant, but I had my suspicions. So females have really low entrepreneurial intent. They're not afraid of ideation, though. Now, they might be if they get in a social setting where there's a thumb on them or they feel like they can't share. But, so it says, what the heck? Like, what's going on? Is this going on in the workplace? Is this going on at home? Where, let's just say, dad talks about the business to the son and the daughter's sitting over here at the dinner table and he's not even talking to her. This is just speculation at this point. I don't know. But it could be a whole world of ideas and solutions to world problems that's being suppressed. There's something going on. And so I got these results, and there was this internal confrontation going on. And so I called Mike and I said, this is what I got. And it makes you question 17 years, like, what were we doing wrong? I mean, granted, this study was for 400 students at 3 schools this past year. It wasn't 17 years, but hey, we can extrapolate out and say, I'm sure we were doing some things wrong. And I'm sure that the cultures were doing some things wrong coming in. So it just makes you wonder, And with a really talented, bright one sitting in the front row, it's like, really made me think. So the process, for me, this process was really entrepreneurial because, man, I dealt with like every emotion. Like, am I good enough for this? Can I do this? And again, I go back to perspective, talent. I had to have perspectives, lots of them. Mike, Rhonda, Will, Ted, Julie, Stephanie, you name it, Margot. I mean, I had to have And sometimes it had to be in your face, like, quit listening to this guy and get it done, you know? Because at one point I went off on a tangent that would have definitely expired my clock. So, thank goodness for Rhonda. So, but there's just this battle. It's just this, you know, it's like, oh, I can't do it. And it's a series of battles, like each semester, then you get to comps, and then you get to dissertation defense or proposal defense, and then you get to defense, like, oh. And so for me, entrepreneurs go through this. They go through this self-doubt, and then they say, I can't do it myself, so there's faith comes into play. And relying on other people, humbling yourself. And you know what? You get all these perspectives. We tell our students this all the time. You get all these perspectives. You take it seriously. You go talk to business owners. You go talk to sales reps. They're a great resource. You go talk to the consumer, of course. And you say, okay, I got it all. I'm making sense of it, making meaning of it. Ultimately, though, it's my thing. And so I have to turn that back out after I take it all in. That's what entrepreneurs do. That's what they do. So this is my contention, okay? So this is taking it all in and throwing it back out. 20 years, a dissertation, having run businesses myself. Entrepreneurial behavior is all about talent. All about talent. Now, here's the key. I asked you to think about what talent meant to you at the beginning. And here's what I say. Redefine talent. And to me, human ingenuity is really a blend of skill, experience, things we've already talked about, deliberate practice of that, knowledge. You go out and you learn things, you talk to people. The big one for me is cognitive lens. And for me, Mike will roll his eyes at this, but I am the assessment junkie. Like, give me another assessment. You know, give me Myers-Briggs, give me DISC, give me StrengthsFinder. Ooh, I drool over StrengthsFinder. Because it's like it's the key to the human code. And what else? Oh, and then there's entrepreneurial ones. There's Builder Profile 10 from Gallup. There's Entrepreneurial Mindset Profile from Eckerd College. There's all these great tools out there to help us, help students, and to help our entree leaders people say, what type of entrepreneurial leader are you? What position are you going to come from? And I don't mean skill. I'm talking about cognitive perspective. Because when you come at it from this way, you're happy, you're doing your best work, you're fulfilled, you're clicking. It's like a multiplier. And so that's why I said, when I showed a picture of my wife and my daughter and she was helping her sew and learn how to do that, because her little kitty had a rip, and we can't have that. And it's like, I know her talents, and responsibility's big to her, development's big to her, and that's what she was doing. And in that moment, I guarantee you, she was living life, for sure. And ultimately, that becomes our perspective. And you see the multiplying power of that when you... Oof. And so people get talent, psychological talent, and skill and knowledge confused. Skill would be like, hey, we're going to hire, and if you work in the university, you can relate to this. We're going to hire this person for our administrative coordinator because they know how to use Banner. Bad idea. I mean, if everything else is met and that person has Banner knowledge, great. But skill. It's a skill, tactile skill for the job. Really, though, what's the fit? What's the perspective they bring to the table that you need? That's more important. And how can you leverage that? How can you harness it? So if you think about the dog and the master here, you know, there's a lot of all this stuff going on. Something in that dog loves chasing that Frisbee. Something loves it. They eat it up. They just love it. But there's also skills involved, like how you catch it. And so the activity is one thing, and then actually the tactile skills involved are another. And then the knowledge of, okay, my dog has this size of mouth. What size Frisbee should I get? What weight? All those things. So, all right. I said it would get graphic. What does this have to do with entrepreneurship? Well, nothing really, to be honest. But it does, because what do you see? What's going on? Like, what is wrong with these people? What's wrong with these people? Now, on one side, I saw the look from Ted, like, on one hand, it is human ingenuity. They're like, hey, I'll find a different way. I'm not sure the different way is real productive or the right way to do things. But here's what I see. I see people who hate their job. They hate the way they're led. They hate the way they're managed. They hate the work they do. They hate the way they have to do it, the way. That's really important. So they're not happy. They're not getting to use their human ingenuity, right? So they're not fulfilled. So this is the crap they do. It is just a manifestation of behavior, right? Makes sense? I mean, am I way out of whack here? All right. I'm not going to give you time to answer that. If you've been in some of my workshops and presentations before, this is my favorite picture ever. Now, what do we have going on here, you might ask? So we're theme park junkies. You probably picked up on that by now. So this is at Legoland a few years ago now. Gosh, time flies. And so we huddle up, on the entrance, before the entrance of the Coastersaurus. And it's like, okay, team. And my wife led this. And it's like, okay, here's what we're going to do. Order. That's order. Here's the plan. Here's the rules. Well, clearly Lindsay had a different plan. So she's the chaos, right? She's the chaos. So my son says she's weird. It's like, no, dude. You're missing the whole point of the whole talk. She's weird maybe, but it's in a good way. It's awesome, right? I don't want to lose that. And how many times do we lose that? Here, anywhere else, in our relationships, whatever. We lose it all the time because we squash it. I didn't get off the ride. I mean, we might have joked around. No, actually, we didn't see this until we got home because the computer screen was down at the ride. So we didn't see it. So at midnight, I was pulling these up, and I said, hey, come here, and I'm laughing, and she gets up to the kitchen table, and we just laugh. Because it's like, that's Lindsay. And I don't ever want to squash that. Like, she's perfect, who she is. And I don't want to squash that. Now, Nate is perfect in that role of being a conformist. There's other things he's not a conformist on, which is fine. He's an artist in his own right. Dancer, you saw that. So, all right, just to close it out here. I think this is a pretty meaningful quote. You are unique, and if that is not fulfilled, then something is lost. Martha Graham. Thank you.
Want to fill a few questions?
Sure. Questions? Or is everybody awake?
Okay. Does I have one? I got a question for you. Okay.
Thanks for filling that void.
Yeah, no problem. So there's an economist in Chicago. Her name's Deidre McCloskey. She says when you look all through history, it's not technology, it's not money, it's ideas that determine what places thrive, what areas thrive, what cities thrive. It's ideas.
Mm-hmm.
What's your take on that?
So you're kind of referring to like geography of jobs and stuff like that too. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would say I would say it's everything, because everything has to start with a thought and an idea. And what happens after that is, oh, let's put that in its place. Let's reject that. And when you reject an idea, you don't reject just that idea. You reject a person. And so one of our colleagues in the field, Jeff Stamp, creativity guy, he always says something like this. He always says, every idea deserves to be heard and respected and revered. Not every idea has a place in the market. Makes sense. But yeah, I think there's no question. That's where it all starts. And the measures, which you would know better than me, definitely indicate, and what we were talking about, geography of jobs, if you want to, I don't know if you want to say that, but geography of jobs says, okay, where are ideas encouraged? And where they are, there's good economic success. So, geographically. Questions? You all have to have a question up there. I feel it. What's the question? Come on, bring it. Quiet.
I have no question.
I should have made you move up to the front row. But see, that might have squashed you. I don't want to do that. No questions? Come on. If you think of one, you email me, okay? It's 1T in Mathews.
So you said you found findings consistent with my research on gender, creativity, and intention. So where do you think we go next? Like, do you think we do an inventory about upbringing and experiences to this point?
I think you've measured that and other points in their life. And then I think we do some interval too, like over a period of time, not just a week.
Yeah, because Shruti and I did a chapter on gender and innovation in the workplace. And I think there might be some things that we gained from there that might also be inspired to think about gender and creativity in the education system.
It'd be interesting too to go beyond gender and to say, is it people, let me be careful here, but people that culture or society would say are weird, whatever, however we define that.
Yeah, non-conformist out.
Yeah.
So don't fit the mold.
Yeah, do they have the same experiences? I don't know, but it'd be interesting to add that as part of it too.
Yeah, and you asked some identification questions about, do you feel like you've been part of the in-group or you constantly on the outside? Do you fit in? Do you think you fit in?
Yeah.
Where do you have?
Well, it's actually that. I was going to ask about the gender. Where did you see that going? So we're on the same page.
Yeah. Anybody else? Stephanie, looks like you have a question.
I just thought, I'm very proud for you and Julie both. The work that you did really, it's wonderful as a friend to see you very fulfilled and just my pleasure to watch.
Anybody else? Question in the front row? No? We could talk about this at the dinner table. All right.
Good job.
All right, thank you.